wondering, and that's actually why I left the room partway through, because I just couldn't take it. But so I missed a whole chunk of the movie. I'm wondering, beyond the trial and beyond, I saw the part near the end of it, like UNICEF and the big gallons of water and stuff. What other initiatives or actions are being done in that area around this issue, either to prevent further, environmental degradation, or to address, the health of these people?
It's a good question. It's a question we get a lot, and it's a question that troubles the lawyers working on this greatly, because we're only lawyers. We have a limited skill set that we can apply. I mean, we would all argue, I think, all of the lawyers working on this case, that a lawsuit is just about the least efficient way that you can go about trying to remedy these problems. We would all welcome and encourage any possible way to solve this earlier. We've approached Chevron repeatedly looking for a way to find some sort of middle ground that we can all agree on. And the fact of the matter is that the company, their position is that they think they have no liability here, and they think that they didn't do anything wrong, and they don't think that anything they did do wrong, they cleaned up back in '95, regardless of what the evidence on the ground shows. So we've been trying to leverage as much public attention, as much resources as we can to try and deliver some near-term solutions or help to the people. We've had limited success at that, and that's partially because we're as busy, we're up to our necks in work just dealing with the lawsuit. Chevron has no shortage of resources to keep us busy. And part of it's because we're lawyers, and we're not doctors, and we're not public health professionals. But some of the things that we've done, or that we've managed to get going through the public attention, is that there's been such an outcry of public attention on this, particularly in Ecuador, that the government of Ecuador has been frankly forced through the public attention there to take proactive action. They've moved some of the people who are most at risk. The Garofalo's, for instance, who you saw in that film, have now been moved to a new home because they were living right next door to, that's like, you're talking about like barely even a bandage on a gunshot wound, but they've at least gotten some of like the 30 or 40 most vulnerable families have been moved. The Petroecuador has started a program called PEPTA, which is a pit remediation program that is trying to remediate some of the pits that Texaco has left there. They're basically trying to clean up Texaco and Chevron's best for them. They're doing an admirable, if inadequate, job of it because they simply don't have the resources to apply or the expertise to apply in a significant way. We took down a couple of U.S. Congress people down there, a congressman and his staff, and they were incensed and have come back and have organized, or in the beginning stages of organizing a U.S. health delegation down to the region to send down some U.S. medical doctors and public health professionals.
Can you tell us who that congressman was?
Jim McGovern out of Massachusetts. And
nobody from Texas will go. I said nobody from Texas will go. Not from Texas, that's right.
We haven't seen a huge outpouring of concern from the Texas delegation of Congressman Sellers, as you can imagine.
Guys, 2 more questions, please, because it's almost time. We have to go back to the room sometime soon.
Does Ecuador have a original superfund? And what we do here where they clean up the government cleans up themselves?
No, is the answer to that. The PEPTA program, which they initiated as, frankly, the response to this lawsuit, is the closest thing they have to that. It's just inadequate, frankly.
So Exxon Valdez was never paid for, did they mention that?
Exxon Valdez just finalized their settlement like 3 months ago.
Really?
It got cut down to like $500 million from the original $8 billion.
It has, my knowledge of like this kind of history is very limited, but has there been a case where the oil company did in fact pay out, and if so, where and when, and if so, and also how was it, like you're talking about 19 billion or something was the settlement, or was the original sort of judgment on this one, and if that was actually administered, how, who are the NGOs, and how do they make sure that the money is spent in those ways?
Well, it's like 3 different questions involved. The first
Yeah,
answer to your
sorry.
question is no. To my knowledge, there has not been a major multi-million-dollar payment made by an oil company to clean up a mess. There have been a lot of smaller payments, depends on what you consider small, I mean, multi-million dollars, 40, 50. The Exxon Valdez, Exxon just surrendered $500 million. I mean, they didn't even contest that. And that was what it got cut down to. They were going to appeal, but they decided just to pay it. That should give you an idea of what kind of resources these companies
Because
have.
it's cheap compared to billions, you know?
Well, they're just kind of like, look, it's time to put it behind us. It's going to cost us $80 million in legal fees to fight it. $500 million, we're a $270 billion revenue a year company. Who
Yeah.
cares?
It's like some change.
You know, it's not, I mean, don't.
I mean, in
The
terms of-
temptation when
yeah.
you're fighting, I don't know how many people are inclined to go towards this field thing. The temptation is to be like, well, this is chump change, then why don't, we can just demand this, or this is how much it is, they'll just pay it. It's still $500 million, it's a lot of money, but to them it is less than it would be to you, for instance.
Yeah.
Just to add to what you're saying, this would sort of create a dangerous precedent then for oil companies. if
Which
they
is
were to-
undoubtedly
yeah.
why the company is fighting this as hard as they have. Texaco and Chevron combined have a lot of what we would call legacy environmental problems. With Kazakhstan, Nigeria, Burma, they've got a lot of problems. And they cannot afford, frankly, to set the precedent, because although they might be able to afford paying us $5 or $10 billion to clean up this mess, they can't afford to pay $5 or $10 billion here, $5 or $10 billion there, $20 billion there, $30 billion there, and put them out of business. And so they're never going to do that to us. The only way they can is if we create some sort of win-win, where they can somehow put this behind them in a way that doesn't open the door to a floodgate of other lawsuits and all these other problems they have around the world. Because, as you might imagine, a lot of U.S. companies weren't exactly minding their P's and Q's across the third world in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Guys,
I just-
last question, because we are actually out of time.
I think the suggested estimate amount was 27 billion, is that right? What percentage of that would go towards paying off the lawyers?
So,
Because that's an interesting subtext of the film, which kind of left a little doubt in my head, is regarding like how much of this.
none of the lawyers, I mean, all of us that work on the case are very adamant that we think that the lawyer should get paid, not just for pure selfish reasons, but because all of us who work here have taken huge pay cuts to work on this case. We might realize a lot of money, but frankly, the odds of us recovering are substantially smaller than they would be in private practice. And I graduated from Harvard Law School a number of years ago. If I compare my earnings potential to my friends who are working in private, more traditional private practice,
We're employed by Exxon.
Yeah.
they're doing better than I am financially. But
So is that, I mean,
Our
it's kind of a
point is-
roundabout way of saying that you're
No, but
not in it for
my point is-
financial gain.
so whatever. But I'm in it for financial gain. If I can get really rich doing this, that'd be great. But that's not the predominant factor in me deciding what I do in my life.
Yeah.
The one thing that we do believe is that we think that the most sure way you can protect human rights and environmental norms across the world is by creating an economically effective model to do so. And we tend to think that plaintiffs' lawyers, if you can properly incentivize plaintiffs' lawyers to make it not a good financial decision for companies to act poorly, then you will have companies acting properly. We think that's why America is safe, because you have aggressive laws and very aggressive lawyers who defend them. So you can go drink out of a faucet here and know that your water is probably not contaminated with petroleum runoff. Because if it was, I would give you my card and then we would go have a talk with Chevron come Monday morning and then you'd be rich. So, I mean, we tend to think that, yes, the lawyer should get paid. I will tell you, and I can't discuss specifics in terms of numbers because
Yeah.
of confidentiality, I will tell you that the lawyers here are taking roughly half of, or potentially taking roughly half of what a plaintiff's lawyer would get in a normal lawsuit. But that's only because this case was founded by a bunch of bleeding heart people who felt like it was highway robbery to demand what a normal plaintiff's lawyer takes.
But it's interesting because in the film there's a subtle subtext there suggesting otherwise.
Well, look, I mean, the film is very clearly designed to create the image of an indigenous and farmer community who are getting fucked between two different worlds, right? The plaintiff's
Yeah.
lawyers who are pushing them from one side and the other side. I mean,